Where are you at, Devananda?
I'm at the Grandview Park
Oh, I know
near
where that is. That's right on
near
88,
Mound
right?
250,
250, yeah.
250 into Moundsville.
Okay, why don't you read the second paragraph here? Now that you're here and
Me?
I can hear you.
I No, I can't read. I ain't got my glasses. I can't see
Oh,
nothing.
okay. All right, we can just listen then.
Yeah,
Michael, you
sorry.
want to read it?
The same one that I was trying before?
Yeah, that the Supreme Lord.
Sure. That the Supreme Lord is all perfect is confirmed in all Shruti mantras. It is said in the Shruti mantras that the all perfect Lord threw a glance over matter and thus created all living beings. The living beings are part and parcels of the Lord, and he impregnates the vast material creation with seeds of spiritual sparks, and thus the creative energies are set in motion to enact so many wonderful creations. An atheist may argue that God is no more expert than a watchmaker, but of course God is greater because he can create machines in duplicate male and female forms. The male and female forms of different types of machineries go on producing innumerable similar machines without God's further attention. If a man can manufacture such a set of machines that could produce other machines without his attention, then he could approach the intelligence of God. But that is not possible, for each machine has to be handled individually. Therefore, no one can create as well as God. Another name for God is Asamordava, which means that no one is equal to him or greater than him. Param Satyam, or the Supreme Truth, is he who has no equal or superior. This is confirmed in the Shruti mantras. It is said that before the creation of the material universe, there existed the Lord only, who is master of everyone. That Lord instructed Brahma in the Vedic knowledge. That Lord has to be obeyed in all respects. Anyone who wants to get rid of the material entanglement must surrender unto him. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, this reminds me of something I often tell people about the, origin of life. They say that they'll create the life in the future in the laboratories. They say that life was automatically happened from a random combination of chemicals in the past. And they say they'll create life in the future. But one guy, his name is Eugene Wigner. He was a probability mathematician, and he actually calculated the odds of a self-replicating organism, like Prabhupada says, male and female forms, producing other, living organisms. What would be the odds of that happening by chance? Can anybody answer that question? You want care to guess what the probability of that would be?
Zero?
Exactly.
I was gonna say none because if nothing can really go, that's kind of not. There's really no answer to that question.
Mathematically, it's zero. And so I don't buy it. All the status quo of the pre-biological form or origin of life is that it was created just by happen chance, by some kind of primordial soup that was it created amino acids, and somehow all this stuff came together and formed cellular walls and then cells, which then started reproducing. It's all simply bullpucky. Go ahead and read the next paragraph, Alan.
Unless one, unless one surrenders unto the lotus feet of Supreme Lord, it is certain that he will be bewildered. When an intelligent man surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna and knows completely that Krishna is the cause of all causes, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, then only can such an intelligent man become a Mahatma, or a great soul. But such a great soul is rarely seen. Only the Mahamanas can understand the Supreme Lord is the primeval cause of all creations. He is Parama, or ultimate truth, because all other truths are relative to him. He is omnipresent. For him, there is no illusion.
Omniscient, that also means like he's everywhere and he knows everything. Some Mayavadi scholars argue that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam was not compiled by Sri Vyasadeva, and some of them suggest that this book is a modern creation written by someone named Vopadev. Actually, Prabhupada confronted some hippie back in the 70s they were having a pandal in India, and this hippie was challenging Prabhupada. He was speaking about the Bhagavad Gita and the process of understanding the Bhagavad Gita. And he said, have you become self-realized? And then Prabhupada said, yes. Have you actually know yourself, the true self inside who you are? And Prabhupada said, yes. He was kind of taken aback, but he said, okay, let me ask you another question. When was the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam or the Bhagavad Gita spoken? There's some people say it was only 1500 years ago. And Prabhupada said, he started arguing with the guy, and he could have just dismissed him, but he started fighting with him, this stupid hippie that had all these nonsense challenging. He said, no, I'm a servant of Krishna. You answer my question first. What is the process of surrender? And so he used that incident as a teaching tool to understand the process of surrender to the spiritual master. That kid was like just a rascal and challenging Prabhupada at every point. And the devotees and even the pandal organizers.
We just went over that.
What's that? What's that, Michael?
Sorry to cut you off. No, it's me, Devananda.
Oh, David.
Sorry to cut you off, but
So go ahead.
we just went over this topic in New Vrindavan a few weeks ago in the Bhagavatam, in the conversations between Maitreya Muni and Vidura. And Maitreya is explaining the origins of the Bhagavatam.
Mm-hmm.
And Prabhupada specifically mentions that also. People say, 1500 years ago, whatever. But but the whole description is there, that it came from Shankarshan, and Shankarshan to Sanat Kumara to some sage, I forgot his name, Shankayana to what's his name now? He was asked by Pulachya. Pulachya told him, you go and you're going to receive. Oh yeah, Parasara Muni.
Oh, right.
And then Parasara Muni instructed to the Maitreya.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're talking, there's practically no beginning to this.
There.
And then he gives you. Yeah, it's the
Kumar.
Kumar. Yeah, it was the so Vidura was hearing from the Kumara Sampradaya, basically. Yeah.
So the Kumars, when did they hear it? Where did they get the information from? From Narayan?
Sanat Kumar, the four Kumaras got it from Shankarshan.
In other words,
Narayan. From Narayan.
Narayan himself. Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
they hung out a lot with the Narayan forms. That's why Jai and Vijay got in trouble, because they didn't let them in. They thought they were just little babies, naked babies, and they wouldn't let them into Vaikuntha. And so they got in trouble. They had to appear as demons.
And I mean, it's inconceivable.
Yeah, well, like
even the Bhagavad Gita,
there's other
we look at the fourth chapter, the second verse.
There's other versions of Bhagavatam on other planets that are millions of verses long. This one's only 17,000.
Yeah.
You started.
So where are we here? Who's speaking?
You were reading by after that name, Vopeva. Or
Vopadeva.
Vopa.
Okay.
Yeah.
In order to refute such meaningless arguments, Sri Sridhar Swami points out that there is reference to the Bhagavatam in many of the oldest Puranas. The first shloka of the Bhagavatam begins with the Gayatri mantra. There is reference to this in the Matsya Purana, which is the oldest Purana. Matsya is the fish incarnation who saved the Vedas.
I've read that one.
Yeah. Matsya,
I actually read all of them.
That Purana that is said with reference to the Gayatri mantra, that the Bhagavatam, that there are many narrations of spiritual instructions beginning with the Gayatri mantra. And there is the history of Vritrasura. Anyone who makes a gift to this great work on the full moon day attains the highest perfection of life of returning to Godhead. I did that. I gave that the whole set away on the Bhadra Purnim. So that's my ticket. I'm going to cash in my ticket. Mm-hmm. There is reference to the Bhagavatam and other Puranas also, where it is clearly stated this work is finished in 12 cantos, which include 18,000 shlokas. In the Padma Purana, there's also reference to the Bhagavatam in a conversation between Gautama and Maharaj Ambarish. The king was advised therein to read regularly Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam if he desired liberation from material bondage. Under the circumstances, there is no doubt about the authority of the Bhagavatam. Within the past 500 years, many erudite scholars and acharyas like Srila Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, Vallabhacharya, and many other distinguished scholars, even after the time of Lord Chaitanya, made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam, and the serious student would do well to attempt to go through them to better relish the transcendental messages. Go ahead, Alan.
All right, there.
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur.
Yeah, specifically deals with the origin and pure sex psychology, Rasha, the avoid of all mundane inebriety. The whole material creation is moving under the principle of sex life, and modern civilization, sex life is the focus for all activities. Wherever one turns his face, he sees sex life predominant. Therefore, sex life is not unreal. It is reality, is experienced in the spiritual world. The material sex life is but a perverted reflection of the original fact. The original fact is in the absolute truth, and thus the absolute truth cannot be impersonal. It is not possible to be impersonal and contain a pure sex life. Consequently, the impersonalist philosophers have given indirect impetus to the abdominal mundane sex life, because they have overstressed the impersonality of the ultimate truth. Consequently, man without information of the actual spiritual form of sex has accepted perverted material sex life as all in all. There is a distinction between sex life in this diseased material condition and spiritual sex life.
Hey, Devananda, I got a question for you. You there? You know, it's said that Lord Shiva incarnated as Shankaracharya in order to preach this Mayavad philosophy, and the reason was given is that he wanted to increase the population. So it says here that you know, there's no information with the Mayavadis, the spiritual form of sex life. So it was just in order to increase the population. Krishna wanted to increase the population, so therefore that Lord Shiva preached this Mayavad philosophy.
I never heard of that about increasing the population. I never heard.
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure I'm sure it's there, but that seems like a really bad deal. I mean, you know, who cares how many people there are, and you know, the Mayavad philosophy is so pernicious and so evil. I mean, Prabhupada came here to smash it, and it seems like, why would you want something like that at the
way I heard it?
You wanted to increase the sex life of people, then why would you have such a pernicious philosophy? Anyway, that's another question I'm going to have to ask.
What I heard, Varshana Maharaj gave a lecture on that one time, on the purpose of Shankar's appearance. And if we take it back to the time when Krishna left, at the time Krishna left, he had taught Bhagavad Gita, and the conclusion was surrender unto me. But, you know, most of the people didn't surrender to Krishna.
Right.
And, you know, Vedic sacrifices were very predominant. So as a result of all those unqualified priests performing these sacrifices at the expense of the lives of animals, therefore, Lord Krishna appears 2,500 years later as Lord Buddha.
Yeah, but that was after. Oh no, that was before Shankaracharya. Right.
Yes, but let me continue. Yeah. So after the disappearance of Krishna, then Krishna makes arrangements to appear as Lord Buddha, and actually on the pretext of rejecting the Vedas, not speaking about God or the soul, he instituted the Eightfold Mysticism, so that people can actually become inquisitive about spiritual nature and also become more compassionate, and stop this animal killing. So then that became rampant. That spread all over. That spread into China. It spread all over the place. Now, so that's atheistic teaching. So now Krishna's desire is to reintroduce the concept of God within humanity. So to reintroduce that, he orders Lord Shiva to appear as Shankar to at least bring in the conception of God. Now, that's just a conception of Advaita, which is oneness with God. And of course, we know, because we've heard from Srila Prabhupada, that actually Shankar was not at fault, really. He was simply carrying out the instruction. And actually, to confidential disciples, he actually told them, Bhaja Govinda, worship Govinda. But unfortunately, the followers did not take that part of his teachings. And they were simply, they simply spread the philosophy of Advaita. And then, of course, Madhvacharya came along and
Madhvacharya made its modus operandi was smashing the philosophy of Shankar. But it seems like whenever there's a great religious teacher, it's not so much the teaching, because Shankaracharya, he said, Krishna, Bhaja Govindam, you worship Lord Krishna. He's the supreme personality of Godhead. He's transcendental to this material world. And, all your foolish arguments and logic will not save you at the time of death. But the so-called followers didn't really pay attention to that. And similarly in Jesus Christ, they kind of like deify him and say that he's the only one, and they make it onto a kind of a monstrosity.
Yeah, I actually thought of something now that you guys just mentioned. I just watched something about Prabhupada where we were talking about a hippie arguing with him. There was an argument between a hippie and Prabhupada where he says, how did you write Bhagavad Gita the way you wrote it about the universal form? Show me your universal form. And Prabhupada got really angry about that. And he says, do not call me Krishna. I am not Krishna. I am just Krishna's servant. I am just the Ishkan messenger of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He just kept like really arguing with this guy, saying, I do not have a universal form. Do not argue with me about calling me Krishna. And then apparently he says, well, where did you come up with this information? Where did this come from with this universal form? And he just kept arguing with them. Actually, Prabhupada was even interrupting him while the hippie was arguing back, saying, I'm not Krishna. I'm just his servant. I'm just the one who is just giving the message to you. So like that's kind of saying, don't shoot the messenger.
Right. Yeah. Prabhupada was, he said sometimes he said that you have to, his method was a little bit rancorous. He would, the chopping method, you have the Bhagavatam in one hand and you have an axe in the other hand. So, that's like the chopping technique. And a lot of his followers, a lot of his God brothers didn't like that, and even during, when Prabhupada was around in Mayapur, some of his followers in Mayapur said they didn't like the way Prabhupada was preaching. And he said, what can I do? I can't compromise the philosophy. You have to speak out against these guys. You can't let them get away with it, Why don't you read the last paragraph there, Alan, or I mean, Michael? This Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
This Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam will gradually elevate the unbiased reader to the highest perfectional stage of transcendence. It will enable him to transcend the three modes of material activities, fruitive actions, speculative philosophy, and worship of functional deities as inculcated in Vedic verses.
So, as long as there's fruitive activity and speculative philosophy and worship of anyone other than Krishna, those are called material activities. So that's the goal of the Bhagavatam is pure, unmotivated, uninterrupted bhakti, devoid of of philosophical speculation and karmic activity. And then when you're on that platform and worshiping Krishna, you know, it's not that you can worship any god. You know, Prabhupada was very strong about that too. He would get into arguments. He said Krishna is the only worshipable god, and then one guy, he'd usually get in arguments with Indians, and the Indian guy quoted some Mayavadi. He said, no, he's a concoctor. He said that is not true, that you can worship any demigod and get to the same goal. And the guy said, don't blaspheme that great Mahajan. And he said, why not? He's concocting these things. And the guy said, you don't understand Krishna. He just turned around and left the place in a huff. And so you know, that was the way. A lot of times Prabhupada would argue with the Indians, but you know, it's just based on time and circumstance. You don't want to do that all the time. But is there anybody have any questions? We got 2 minutes left. I think we won't start the second verse. We'll just take any questions or whatever anybody has about this first verse.
Is a spiritual sex life basically how you would talk about the gopis, where they would is that like the difference between, say, humans have mundane sex, what I was reading about the verse before, than the gopis you mentioned about what they
you can't even really understand the spiritual sex life, because the gopis had no mundane desire. They didn't want to enjoy sex life. As soon as you love is basically, love is coming from the spiritual world, but lust is different. It's like the difference between gold and iron. Gold is a pure metal, but iron is is not valuable. And so the sex life in the spiritual world is pure and unmotivated and not at all selfish. They don't have one bit of selfish desire. What they simply want to please Krishna. So that's the difference.
In the spiritual world, there's one lover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got 1 minute left. Do you want to say something?
In the spiritual world, there's only one lover.
You want to say something else about that?
Well, it just reminded me that
Good.
In the spiritual world, Prabhupada said there's only one lover. In the material world, we're all conflicting with each other as being the lover, you know.
Yeah.
We're all trying to be the enjoyer. Whereas in the spiritual world, every living entity is directing their attention into bringing Krishna pleasure.
Right.
So that is the ultimate.
And Radharani was very strong about that. She said, I'll bring a thunderbolt down on the head of any gopi or any other woman that's trying to exploit, Krishna for her own, pleasure, or for her own means, because we only care about what Krishna is enjoying. He's the only enjoyer. We're all